Okay, now we're starting today in Genesis chapter 11. Before we get to this, you may have noticed some patterns, some repeating patterns in the book of Genesis where you have, for example, the creation account where God graciously creates all things for mankind, gives them dominion, gives them some simple command. And then there's this rebellion, disobedience, and then God intervenes, comes down, he brings a curse, intervenes, but with that curse, there is a measure of grace he gives to them as well. And then starts again. So the first time that happens, that's in Genesis 3, the first fall. But then we go a little further in the story, and when we get to Genesis 6, we see it again, where God intervenes. He is dealing with a violent, rebellious people, and he comes down and on all mankind, he pronounces the flood and judgment, but he also gives grace to them and preserves Noah and starts again. That's Genesis 6. Well, now we come to the third time, Genesis 11, where we're going to have all of mankind being presented and their rebellion, and then God intervening and cursing or punishing in some way, but also with a measure of grace. And this, of course, is the story of the Tower of Babel. So this is really our third universal rebellion, we'll call it that. The first universal rebellion in the garden with Adam and Eve, they were all of mankind that fell. And Genesis 6, it was all of mankind that God sees is full of violence. And now in Genesis 11, we're going to see the whole earth once again seem to be conspiring. So let's take a look at our passage and see where it takes us. So let's start here. Bob Thomas, would you mind starting us off here? Maybe just read the whole story for us, verses 1 to 9, I believe it is. Let me pull it up again. There we go. There we go.
Okay. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from the Lord dispersed them over all of the face of the earth.
Great. All right, so we have a little bit of a setup here, and that is, this is a story concerning in verse 1. What's the situation as the story begins? Verses 1 and 2 gives sort of the setup for what's about to happen.
Same language.
Yeah, okay, so the whole earth had one language.
And they decided to all come together.
Yes, and they migrate from the east and settle, found a plain and set in the land of Shinar, right? So I think that's around where, well, that would be where Babylon is today, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yes, that is Babylon. Yeah.
And settled in Shinar. Okay. Now, a couple things about this. Just want to make a few notes concerning this. what's this? Do you remember the significance of the east and the directions in the scriptures so far?
If you head east,
Everything-
you're going away from God.
Yeah, so east is away from God. But they're not going east, are they?
No, they're coming back towards God.
Yeah, they're coming from the east. Okay. Now there's a couple things to note about this here. They are they're of one language and they're coming from the east. The idea is that it seems like they're returned, but they don't come all the way. They sort of settle in a place. And when they're there, what do they attempt to do here? So they in one sense, you get a hint at the beginning, that simple phrase from the east, that this is sort of this is not simply building a tower in a city. There's something spiritual about this, about seeking God in this endeavor here. As they're coming from the east now, and they're settling in Shinar. Now, right away, something's not right. Because back in Genesis, what was the mandate that God gave Noah?
To spread out and cover populate the earth.
Yeah, the command for Noah was it Genesis 9? Was again the creation commandment of be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of it's kind of a wanting to go back to Eden in a sense. You're coming back, but their attempt is not to spread out and to fill the earth with the knowledge of the glory of God. It's to come together, and their biggest fear, if you notice, is that they be scattered. Did you catch that? Lest we be scattered. Their biggest fear is being scattered about. They want to stay where they are. They want to, it's a very self-centered faith. It's very much like idolatry was. So the next thing they see is, so that's the first part where we already can see there's a rebelliousness in this. They're going against the clear mandate that God gave Noah to fill the earth, to spread out, and they don't want to do that. They want to settle where they are and gather together, and their biggest fear is being scattered. Okay. So this, but then verse 3 and 3 says something interesting about them. What's in verse 3?
They're starting to build.
Okay. Now, yeah, they start building, and what does it say specifically about how they build?
They made the bricks and
Yeah.
then fired them, burnt them.
Yeah. So they're making their own bricks. Instead of the stone that God provided. And bitumen, what's bitumen? Or bitumen?
That's basically what they make the mortar from.
Yeah, is that a
Like a cement, maybe?
Yeah, it's like cement, I think.
Isn't it a little bit of tar in that, or?
could be. Yeah, I don't know much about it, but it sounds to me like it's a sort of a new technology, like brick is to stone, bitumen is for mortar. So they make their own bricks and their own, is it bitumen or pitch or whatever it is that they would use for instead of mortar. So there's a level in which they are.
Bitumen is it's a black thick mixture of hydrocarbons. It came from naturally, or as a residue from petroleum. It's like bituathane. You've heard the word bituathane when they do roofing.
Huh.
Yeah.
They
So
put
is
that
it-
thick tar up around chimneys to seal it real well when they put the shingles.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure it's
Okay.
similar to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that the main focus is this is a new technology. They're using bricks instead of cutting stones to build something. They're making their own bricks. It's really a man-made tower, and but the big part is, what's their goal? In verse 6.
Stay in one place.
Yeah, let's start with that first phrase. Okay, they want to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. So again, this is throughout the Bible, if you remember, where there was always this concern about the high places. You remember that? Where they tell about the kings, the good kings would tear down the high places and the bad kings would let them go. And the high places were where basically the pagans, they worship their gods. They would always, when you go to worship, you would worship in a high place. That's why I was explaining the day to someone that the sanctuary that our forefathers built here at Market Street is a high place. You have to climb steep stairs to get there.
Mm.
It was designed that way. That worship was taking place in a high place, and that's, Jerusalem is on a mountain. Eden was a mountain. All the places where God dwells is in the kind of ascending into the heavenly realm, sort of symbolically. They're building a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. What's interesting is that they're not in a high place, are they?
Mm.
If you remember, they're not on a mountain. They found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they're on that plain.
They're trying to build their own high place.
Exactly right. They build their own mountain. So a lot of it is this man-made. It's all very symbolic of sort of a man-made religion here, a man-made seeking of God, where they're going to build their own mountain into the heavens. And ultimately, you'll notice that they're building this mountain not to seek the glory of God and to extend the glory of God, but what are they ultimately seeking here in verse 4?
It's kind of like their own immortality.
Kinda, huh? So what is it? How's the phrase? Let's
Make a name for ourselves.
let's make a name for ourselves. What does that mean?
Self-glorification.
Yeah, this is seeking their own glory. Everything about this is their own glory. They take a plane, they're going to build their own mountain with the materials they use or the materials that they made. This is really a man-made endeavor, the way it's described. And so this man-made pursuit of glory and immortality, and it's in direct violation to the commandment that God has given of, this is not how it goes. It's, you don't climb up to me and build your way to me. I've come down to you. Now you go spread my glory as you fill the earth. And they're doing the exact opposite. They're coming in and building up, as opposed to God coming down and going out. It's a total reversal. So now the Lord sees this. So let's look at the Lord's. It's interesting. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower. That's interesting.
Mm.
I mean, he can't see from heaven. What's going on here?
Yeah.
What do you think that looked like, that the Lord came down to see the city and the tower? We actually have hints of what that looks like in later chapters, when the Lord came down to see and to witness a rebellion. Do you remember what that looked like?
Yeah.
It's like he's getting ready to act.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was gonna say, it says that about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
The Lord see what was going on.
I think there's a suggestion that this is he comes down probably like the way he did with Abraham, where the Lord appears to him as a man and two angels with him, and they come to him, and then the two angels go forward to look at Sodom and to bear witness to it. So I think there seems to suggest this is probably a physical form of some sort, that he comes down to bear witness to what is being done. The Father sees these things, but there needs to be a proper investigation, so to speak. So when he does so that's really for all of our sake to see that they have been properly judged here. So the Lord comes down to see the tower and the city, and then his verdict, the Lord says what about this? Verse 6.
If he lets, it's like if he lets them keep going, they'll just do whatever they want. They'll just, there'll be no coming back.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He says they are the key. What will make nothing impossible for them is that their unity. They are unified right now with one language, and therefore they'll be able to do great things.
mm,
So
When
the depravity is only gonna get worse, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those great things are in their name, not his.
Yeah, their great things are in this context are great evil things. Their intent is wicked. It is exactly what happened in the garden. If you remember, what did the Lord say to the serpent when he cursed him? He says, now the first thing he tells the serpent is, I will put enmity between you and the woman. At that point, they had been united. The serpent and the man and the woman were united in purpose. And so that was you have to break that up. You cannot, I mean, it makes perfect sense. If you have, one of the things like in the Middle East, back in the day of the Cold War, if you remember, Iran and Iraq were always fighting each other. They were mortal enemies at that time. And the thing is, they both hated America. And so we were alternately funding, I think, either of them to keep them fighting, because that kept us safe. Because if they united, that would be a problem for us. But it's actually, it's a helpful thing when your enemies are fighting amongst each other. And so this is the trouble, is that the whole world is united, but they're united in rebellion against the Lord, as we saw earlier in the garden. And so therefore, this can't continue. If he lets it be, this is just the beginning of what they're going to do. And worse things are coming. So the Lord speaks. And he says, verse 7, let us go down and confuse their language. So the question is, who's he speaking to? There's a few answers to that are interesting.
I know what you're gonna say as one possibility. I realize you're just saying one possibility. I have always myself used it as in a Trinitarian.
Yeah, this is the challenge. Is it for the Christian? We might look at this and say that the God is speaking to himself, the Father, speaking to the Son. And I obviously, if that's definitely the case, the Father speaks to the Son. He's always speaking to the Son, always showing him what he's doing. So there's nothing that would certainly apply in this case. Of course, the Jews would not have understood it this way.
Right.
So how would the Jews who read this explain the us here?
He's bringing angels with him.
Yeah, the Father, God is speaking, the Lord is speaking to the heavenly host.
And it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that's how they would have understood it clearly, because they didn't believe in the Trinity. And that's similar to how they would have read creation. The Lord is speaking, let us make man in our image. And so there's a strong case for that. And I have objections to neither of those positions. There is a passage in Deuteronomy, I think I mentioned in other times, that brings the sons of God into this picture, but we can get that
Yeah.
another time.
If I could just say, in the years that I've spoken to Jehovah Witnesses, I've always asked them, who's the us? And an easy out for them would have been to tell me option 2 here.
Yeah.
But they have never, not one time have they ever offered that option. It closed their mouths instantly. And they
Really?
wouldn't do anything else, every single time.
They didn't prepare for that one. I'm surprised. That seems like an easy one for them.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Because they rejected Trinity, right? So that was my point. And they had no answer.
And by the way, I don't know if you've seen the Jehovah's Witnesses have been spent a lot of time on that in Market Square there. They've got their
Yeah.
little board up today. I saw them out there.
Right.
All right, so the Lord's making this declaration, and the intent is to confuse the language. And then what happens from there, after confusing the language, the Lord basically dispersed them over the whole face of the earth. So he scatters them. Against their will, he is determined. This is the reason there are nations. This is the reason there are different languages, is because there was a time when we were unified in our rebellion to God and refused to spread his glory around the earth. And out of his judgment and out of his mercy, God confuses the languages to which strangely enough diminishes the evil. The most frightening thing is if there was peace on earth before Christ returns. That is a terrifying thing. If there was man-made peace on earth, because it's an evil peace of rebellion. You want to know what that kind of peace looks like? Look at North Korea. North Korea has no dissent. It's perfect peace and unity, as all the people live in absolute terror. That's what it looks like. So for the earth, so to be at peace apart from Christ reigning, it's basically it's a dictatorship. It's a absolute control, totalitarian government where you're afraid to even think the wrong things. And so that's where God, out of his mercy, confuses the languages, which minimizes the extent of the evil we can perform, but also scatters them, which is against their will. He makes them obey and spread and fill the earth. You're not going to do it willingly. Like my mother used to say this to me all the time, when she'd tell us to do something around the house, a chore, and we always believed in choice and free will, right? And we'd say, Mom, don't we get a choice? And she'd always say, yes, you have a choice. You can do it willingly or unwillingly. That's the choice, right? And so that's kind of what's happening here, is God is basically saying you can do this willingly or unwillingly, and apparently it's going to be unwillingly because of this rebellion. So that's the kind of overview of the Tower of Babel here. Any comments, questions on that so far?
Well, it's kind of clear that it was, he did this strictly because of their intent. Because, I mean, if you think about it, I don't care how good their brick and mortar was, they're not going to build anything close to the towers we have today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just lets them grow everywhere.
Yeah. So the towers we have today are unbelievable how high we want to get them to be. I think,
And they still haven't reached heaven.
No. I'm going to be going to when I go to Africa in the fall, I'm going to stop in Dubai, and there's the tallest building in the world right now, which is the Burj Khalifa, which is 2 times the size of the Empire State Building. So that's so big, and apparently that's going to be eclipsed soon too. There are other countries that are trying to build even higher. Like, it's really interesting. It's like for what purpose? Right? Why is that such a, and it's to make a name for ourselves, seek our own glory. Which is why the cities in the Bible don't really get a good name, do they? It's like when you see cities, if you remember, who was the first person who built the city? If you can remember.
Nimrod.
even before Nimrod,
Yeah, the one that took 2 wives, didn't he?
even before him. The very first person to build a city. Do you remember this?
Oh, that was Cain.
That was Cain.
He built Nod.
That's right.
Yeah, Cain built a son for his built a city for his son. I think it was Enoch. He built a city and named it after him. The greatest rebel. It's the, and that's what you're going to see in the scriptures. There's this, the battle from the beginning is not so much a battle of good versus evil, because that's too confusing for people, because there are a lot of good things that happen, or things that look good, that are actually on the enemy's side. It's really, the battle is between Babylon and Jerusalem.
Mm.
The glory of man versus the glory of God. That's what this is about.
So does this mean we're in trouble now that Amesbury's a city?
Is it a city? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
Well, all of Massachusetts is in trouble, Bob. We're in big trouble.
yeah.
So, but it's interesting in Amesbury, to give Amesbury a little bit of credit, and some of the other towns, they have, I think they have a bit of an unspoken rule, which they have in Europe, or at least in Austria when I was there, is they don't have skyscrapers in Austria, because you are not allowed to build a building higher than the church.
Mm.
Well,
The church always had to be that tallest building in the town. And you can go high, but you can't overshadow the church in these small towns.
Mm.
even
That's why they
today,
kept building bigger churches.
Yeah, well, that's why they built those churches pretty high. But now I don't know that was the rule. I'm curious if it was in the rule for the big cities, but I know like in Graz
Yeah,
and Linz, the smaller cities, there was no, the church was always the biggest building there.
My dad used to say that's because on the churches, they would always have a steeple with a cross at the top because they were higher than the buildings.
Yeah, the cross had to be the highest place. I mean, it was,
Mm.
they used to have faith up there. I mean, and you see symbols of the remnants of that faith, which is kind of neat. So that's why I'm a fan of steeples. I like steeples.
Mm.
I know they're inconvenient and they're annoying for modern churches, but I like them. I like them.
Yeah.
Good. So, all right. So that's where we begin, and we're going to keep this story in mind when we're going to come back to it when we get to the story of Abraham, because there's a lot of, Abraham is chosen in this context. This is the last story before we get to Abraham's calling in Genesis 12, and you're going to see a nice juxtaposition between true biblical faith and religion, the way that God intends for us to know him, and the way that man seeks to know God, or to be God, I should say. So, all right, let's pick it up from here, and we'll get to another genealogy. Yay.
Mm.
And we'll start there. So what I'm going to do with this, it's very similar to the genealogy we saw back in Genesis 5, when we had Adam down to Noah, where it just gives the years they lived when they fathered their child, and then how old they were, then they died. So I want to kind of go through that and see how it goes. So it's very similar in format, even to the point at the end where it ends with Terah fathering 3 sons. That's how we saw last time, where Noah fathered his 3 sons at the very end. So that's kind of, it's a similar format. So let's take a look. Let's see. Claudette, would you read verses just 10 to 17? Let's do that for starts.
Okay. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Eber, and Shelah lived after he fathered Eber 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters.
Great. Now you'll notice that they have other sons and daughters, but their focus is on one particular son. This is the line. We're always keeping it out. These genealogies are very important because the promise at the beginning was the son of the woman. There is this descendant coming. And so we're starting to see how it goes. It goes from, it's not going to be Cain's line, it's going to be Seth's line. And then we follow through Seth's line and we get to Noah, and we realize soon after the flood that it's not going to be Ham, it's going to be Shem. That's the line that we're keeping an eye on. And then they have many sons and daughters, but there's one in particular, one son that we're keeping an eye on as we go through it. So if you have your, I don't know if you have your Bibles open to you here, because I'm going to pull down to a chart and I want to fill in the numbers in the chart. So I'll need your help kind of calling out the numbers here. So on my chart down here, I'm going to skip down here. We're going to do this genealogy from Noah to Terah. That's where we're going to go this time. And actually, you know what? We're going to go from Noah to Abram. These are our 10 generations here. All right. So when we left off with Noah, he was 500 years old when his son Shem was born. He then lived another 450 years. His whole life was 950 years. The year we had calculated of his birth was 1,056 years, according to the genealogies, after Adam. And then the year of his death was 2006. So we'll start next with Shem. How old is Shem when his son is born?
100.
Okay, 100. The rest of his life, how many years does he live?
Four.
He lives 500 years.
500 years. So his total life would be 600 years.
Mhm.
The year of his birth was 1556. So the year of his death would be what, 2156? Am I doing my math right here?
Yes, yep.
All right, great. All right, let's go to Arphaxad. What's his, how old is he when he gives birth to a son?
35.
35, young guy. All right.
No, just a kid.
That's how old I was when I gave birth to my son. Well, my wife gave birth to son. How many more years did he live?
He lived an additional 403 years.
103 years. Okay, so his total is 438. The year of his birth would,
1658.
well, it would be, that'd be, so he was born, yeah, wait a minute, he's 100 years old. So it'd be 100 years, because he was born when Shem was 100. So that would be what, 1656? I think that's right.
My Bible says 1658 pass. I'm looking right at a chart.
Are you really?
You don't really think I'm doing all these calculations? I'm looking
So what'd they say for Shem for his year of his birth? 1558?
at, hold on, Shem, it's 1556 for Shem.
How does he
And
get there?
1556 for, yeah, I may have missed, I had the wrong line of view. 1556 for Shem and 1558 for our Pakshad.
That doesn't-
1556 for Shem and 1658 for Pakshad.
Well, but Shem was 100 years old when he gave birth to him. Doesn't make sense.
I'm
Right.
just saying, this is what the chart.
All right, that chart is wrong. I don't care what. All right, so I'm gonna go with my gut here, 1656. And then if we add his total whole life, so he dies in what year? 2094? Help me out here. Is that seem about right? I should get my calculator out.
2096 in my chart.
All right, good. It's 2 years off of Rob's chart. Okay, good. All right, Shelah. How old was he when? Maybe just go down the chart this way. Let's say Shelah. How old was Shelah?
30.
He's 30. And then he lives how many more years?
403.
3.
403.
Mm.
Also, again, 403?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so a total of 433. Eber, how old's Eber when his son is born?
34.
34. And then how many more years?
Additional 430.
Okay, so he goes to 464. All right. And then we've got Rue. We'll just skip ahead to Rue.
Rue, he was 32,
Yeah,
and he lives an additional 207 years.
interesting. Big drop off now. That brings him up to 239. Serug,
30 is the first number. And then an additional 200 years for a total of 230.
okay. And then we've got Nahor.
29. And he lives an additional 19 years to make it 140.
119 years.
I'm sorry, 119,
Mm.
19,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
140.
148, this thing says.
Okay, and then Terra,
70. And
Okay.
then he lives an additional 135 years for a total of 205.
okay, 205. All right. And I think that's it for the genealogy then. And then we just have Abrams born on that. So, all right. So we go through this here. So I want to just get a picture of some things here. So 433 years is his whole life. The year of his birth would be pretty close. It would be what, 1686? Because he's
Yeah.
30 years. And then the year for the next guy would be add 34 to that. Is that 1710, 20? 1720.
20?
I think that's right.
Yep.
1752.
Yeah.
1782. And we add to that another 29, so that's 18. I'm not sure what that is. 1890? 18.
Cool.
11?
How about 1849 and 1997? For
11.
the-
Wait a minute. So yeah, 1782, we add 29 to that, right? So that's 1802,
11.
1811. And then we had Terra is 70 years to that, 1881.
81.
Rob, what does your chart say for those dates? I mean, I feel like I'm 2 years off from yours.
Yeah. Surprising, Pastor, you're a math major. How can this be?
Well, I think they
I'm just,
how do you go from 1556 to 1658 when it's 100 years old that Shem is, right?
yeah, somehow there was a different number earlier, and it just, it goes bigger and bigger. But which date did you want?
All right, so 1656, 1686, 1720, are those all about where we are? 1752,
Yeah, mine have a couple of years off from that, but that's okay.
1782, 1811, 1881, correct?
Yeah, within 3.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm doing this all wrong. Oh, I think I did it all wrong. That's why. Okay. Because he's, all right, so we had 100 there. Oh, that's what I did. We got to add 35 instead of 30. Sorry, guys. So it should be like 1691. And then we add 30. So it's 21. And then we add 34. So it's 55. This is probably tediously boring right now for everybody. And then we had 80. There's a point to it though. 87. And then we had 30, and it's 17, and then we add 29, and it's 1846. And then we add 70. So Abraham is born. That's what I wanted to get to. Abraham is born in 19, add 70 to that. 16? 1916. All right, so what I want you to see from all this is looking at the dates. These are the dates of their birth. And what's amazing is when, according to this, when Abraham is born, Noah is still alive.
Mm,
And he's got another, what, 90 years to go? So according to this, Noah is still alive somewhere on that earth, along with all the others, by the way, when Abraham not only is born, but when he leaves. Is that, am I seeing this right? Because he leaves, he's 75 years old when he leaves. And so that would have been before the year 2000. And all these guys were alive. Just adds a little bit of a different picture to it as well. So if we would add these numbers up, and we add now 433 to these guys' life, and so the date of their death, so 1691 plus 433 is 2,100 and was that 24? Stretching my mind here. Then we've got 1721 plus 464. That would be 2,185. And 1755 plus 233 is 19. That's a little bit earlier. It's actually
94.
94. Thank you. 1787 plus 230 is 2,000.
24.
What ends with a 7? 17. I think that's right. 1817 plus 148 is, that was it. Nahor died young, huh? Okay, 1900. Oh, he's only 148.
65.
1965. Thank you. And then 1846 plus 205, we get 2000 and 51, right? Okay. And
I
then
think the Shah will someday be expanded past it to put Merton Shoot in there.
So take a look at it here again. So if we kind of examine it a little more closely, you'll notice some things here. Is that the last one, a long life is something of significance in the Bible, of where God's blessing is with these folks, and so that's why Eber is a significant guy here. That's why they're called the Hebrews, if you remember. Eber really is on this genealogy, he outlives everybody, if you can see, except for Abraham, will take over. So Eber even outlives Terah, Abram's father. I mean, Eber outlives him by like 130 years, for goodness sake. That's unbelievable. So there's something special about Eber. He lives a very long time. Second is, Shem, who's he lives the longest in the line, of course. He's the first one, but he's going to be, and so this helps us understand why, for example, they were called Hebrews as well as Semites. These two descendants here, they're very noticeable. That all of them were present when Abraham was born. And they would have not only just seen him born, but they would have seen him grow up to a pretty good age. And so it's If we add 75 to 1916, you get 1991 is the year of Abram's calling.
Mm.
And what year was Babel?
Babel was during the time of Peleg, we're told. During his time. Where's Peleg? Did I miss him?
Was he one of the offshoots that,
Didn't we have Peleg in there somewhere?
Peleg's
No.
on my, Peleg is right after Eber.
Mm.
That's him. Okay. Is this still a Ru, right?
Yes, right after
yes.
Peleg. Goes Eber, Peleg, Ru.
All right, now this completely throws everything off. Okay. Forget everything I said. We need to go, recalculate this here. How old is Peleg when he's born? How old is Eber? Eber's 34. How old is Peleg when Ru is born?
30.
30. Okay, can you double check these numbers here on the left column there? And then he lives how many more years?
you need an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, I know. I do. I really do at this point.
Peleg lives an additional 209 years for a total of 239.
Okay. And then Ru is 32, 207, 239?
32, yes.
Okay, so this would be 1721. This would be correct. Well, this would be 1751 now.
Mm.
All right. You know what? I'll tell you what, I'm going to rework this and come back to it. But I think you can see even now, even with these calculations, they are all present when Abraham arrives.
Mm.
Did you
Stunning.
happen to pick up in your the reading that there's a little bit of difficulty with Terah's, how long he lived?
What's that? What does it say?
It says he lived to be 205 in this genealogy, but in chapter 12, it talks about the fact that he was 70 when Abraham was born, and Abraham was 75 when he left Haran. So
Yeah.
it makes it sound like Stephen said in Acts that Abraham left Haran when his father died, and that was at 75. So there's a little
that's
discrepancy
interesting.
on
Yeah,
whether he was 205 or 145. Just throwing that out there.
No, that's good. That's helpful to know. I mean, in the genealogy, it's like it states the numbers there, but yeah, that's interesting. I have to
So
look
if
at.
we're off by 2 years, don't worry about it.
Yeah, we got to rework I'm going to rework these numbers for you. We'll get it out there corrected. But I do want to just make note that you can see already from the beginning that there are the two most notable of this genealogy from Noah is Shem, and then Eber sticks out like a sore thumb with his long life. And then you'll see that when Abraham arrives, they are all witnesses to this. Which is really, again, to think that Noah was still breathing, still present. And that's why a lot of times I think we mentioned it before of why it's not a big deal that the Bible was orally transferred from one generation to the next. You consider that if this is true, and we believe it to be so, that they lived to such a degree, Abraham, to get the creation story, talks to Noah, who basically was, I think if we remember, was Adam around when Noah was born?
No,
No.
I just missed him.
just missed them. Yeah.
When we went back to that, we saw that Adam was 930. He just missed Noah's birth.
Mm.
Born 1056. So Noah would have been many of his ancestors were around when he was there. So we have, for example, we know that Enosh. So Adam and Seth had died, but Enosh was around when Noah was born,
Yeah.
and he was. And Noah was like 80 in his 80s when Enosh finally died. So you think they had conversations about things when Enosh can look to his grandfather is Adam. It's like, that's amazing. And then Noah was there when Abraham's born. He would have had some, even though they were in idolatry, there was knowledge of the one true God present amongst them. And so when the Lord appears to Abram, I would argue the Lord is, even though Abram is being called out of idolatry, the Lord is not a stranger to him. So very, very interesting.
I wonder if Noah heard that this happened to Abraham.
Yeah, you wonder, I mean, where was Noah when this is happening? What kind of, I mean, if you live that long, I mean, I don't know what your condition would be like, what would be your mental framework? I think that would be pretty torturous to live a couple hundred years in a miserable state. So yeah, very interesting. All right, well, let's finish up this chapter here, and so we can get to the Abraham story next week here. So let's get to that. Bob Fowler, would you read our last paragraph there? Shoot, where do we go? Okay, verses 27 to 32.
Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nabor, and Haran, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nabor's wife was Milcah. And the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and Ishka. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
So we have now the generations of Terah, and this whole next section is the story of Terah's children. Every story interaction, all the characters, the main characters are descendants of Terah, not just the men, but the women too. So let's go through this so far. So we have here Terah, he fathers who? Abram,
Nahor and Haran.
Nahor, and Haran. Okay. And we are told that Haran was the father of
Lot.
Lot. Okay. Then we're also told that Haran, what happened to him?
Died before his
He
father.
died.
Okay, so he died in Ur. So he dies, and so now we'll take him out of the picture. We'll cross him out for a second. And so you're left with now Lot there. Okay.
Mhm.
Haran was also the father of the two women. Do you want to include them or not?
Yes, we're going to put them in there. So the name of Abram's wife was Sarai.
Yeah.
We'll put that in parentheses here. And the name of Nahor's wife is
Milcah.
who is the daughter of Haran. Need to draw some lines here. Let's draw a line here. So we have this connection here And this connection here, okay. All right, next, what else have we told? Any other names here?
Iscah. Iscah is
The daughter of
also
Haran.
the daughter of Haran.
She's that's a girl too, Iscah?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
All right, let me get this down. I lost my cursor for a second, hang on. All right, so Iscah. You know, no offense, I'm gonna put the girls in parentheses just for, so we can remember the ladies here. All right, so this is. All right, so these are his children, Iscah, Milcah, and Lot. Milcah joins with Nahor, and Abram marries Sarai. Okay. All right, so that's the setup here. Now, later on, we're going to find out that some other significant people are going to come in. Why are we mentioned with Milcah? Well, we know Lot is going to be joining with Abram and Sarai. Milcah and Nahor, if you remember, they're going to have children. Do you remember who their children are going to be? You remember they come a little bit later.
Say it again, Pastor.
Nahor and Milcah will have children. There's two in particular that are noteworthy. They come a little bit later in the story. One will marry Abram's son and her brother. Remember? Okay. All right. It's
Rebecca?
yeah, Rebecca. Rebecca
Oh,
and
Laban and Rebecca?
Laban and Rebecca are the descendants of Nahor and Milcah. They come from them. And then, of course, Leah and Rachel will come from Laban. So, you know, as we go down the list and we see the stories of Isaac and Jacob and their wives, they're all in this one family here. They all come from Terah. That's why, even though we don't know anything about Terah, he is the father of, just like Noah was the father of all humanity again. Terah is the father of all who are part of God's family of faith. And so every character in there is coming from Terah. So
My Reformation Bible that I have, the notes down below on Sarai said that she was she was Abraham's sister as well as his wife, but she was the
Yes.
daughter of
yeah,
Terah.
sister.
yeah, so she's also from Terah. Again, every one of them. It's seems a bit incestuous even here, but yeah, we know that Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran as the boys, and they were told by another woman he fathers Sarai. Now, maybe I'm assuming it was probably after his wife died, or maybe he took a second wife. I don't know, but he had a daughter, and so yeah, interesting. So, all right, so that's where we go, and so we left off with, come down here. Okay. So what are we told as we set up the story here? In verse 31, following. So we'll set up a few things, a few facts. First one is in verse 30. Is that Sarai
Was barren.
was barren. That, by the way, as I'm looking back at our list here, it again, it seems like is it that way? Maybe I'm mistaken. No, let me pull it back. The age of people when they have kids is interesting. And in this case, Terah, unlike the others, he's 70 years old when he has Abram. We know Abram, when he gets to his point, is 100 years old. there's this waiting that seems to take place with the special ones here. So where are we coming back to? So let's come back to our passage. So Sarah was barren, and then we have Terah takes Abram and Lot
Mm.
and Sarah with him, and they go where?
Haran.
Takes Abram, Lot, and Sarah, and moves to Haran. Now, here's the thing. The suggestion is that Terah probably settles this area and names it after his son. That's the suggestion, the son who died. So I don't know if there's another passage that says that specifically, but I think that's the assumption, is that Terah settles this land and names it after his son. So that's why it's called Haran, who died. And they settled there. Okay. And then we're left with Terah dies in Haran. But you'll notice their intent was not to go to Haran, was it?
No.
See, they were supposed to go to the land of Canaan, intending to go to Canaan. But they settle in Haran. Now, the question is, why do they settle in Haran? Why don't they make it to Canaan? Well, one strong suggestion would be is maybe he couldn't make it. He couldn't make the trip. It's quite possible that his age, that Terah at that point can't finish the trip and go forward. Some have suggested that it was an act of rebellion, but that's not the case, because God didn't command Terah to go to Canaan. He just did. It's not until God speaks to Abram that he has him go there. And it's quite likely that they just couldn't make the trip. It was just too much at that point. They found a good spot, and that was sufficient, and they settle there. God has plans for Abram, not for Terah, to go into that land. So we'll kind of leave it there, I guess. Any comments, questions before we break? Sorry.
I thought that that chart, the thing that I got most out of that chart was that God's word is preserved, because these dudes are all around, are still living.
Yeah.
In instances, which is huge, because that's often an opposition question, to when they doubt God's word, how it was retained and what happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's really powerful. My grandmother was 103 years old when she died.
Mm.
She lived in her prime years. She was 20 years old when the Armenian genocide hit Turkey. She was around for that. She saw it all firsthand. Now, that's an event that happened 100 years ago, and she gave a firsthand account of the atrocities. And so the Turks can say all they want that it never happened. But it was like she and her sisters and all these great aunts and uncles, they lived through that. They could give firsthand testimony, and especially for her, she's 103 when she died. So to ponder that, it was like, wow, she was born in 1895. And the things that she saw that she could testify to me, who was, born much, much later, is remarkable. And so you have a firsthand account given to you. Now you have Noah can give a firsthand account of the flood. Abraham, a firsthand account. That's pretty impressive. So yeah, I absolutely agree. All right, let's
Yeah, I have a question. I may be getting ahead of ourselves here, but I thought that when Abram left he did not know where he was going. Like God said, I will show you. And then there was a 14-year period where God didn't speak to him. but he remained faithful.
So he, well, let's see, we'll get to the Abram story.
Uh-huh.
You know, he leaves. It's clear they intend to get to Canaan, and God says, "Go to the land that I will show you," not knowing where he's going, and meaning he's never been there before.
Oh, okay.
Not that he knows of the land of Canaan. He knows that this is a place that they're going to get to, but he's never been there before. It's a
Okay.
strange land. So it's kind of like saying, you know, I'm going to send you on a trip to, I don't know, to Thailand. I've never been to Thailand.
Mm,
I know it exists. I know on the map. I know how to get there. I just don't know what's there. I have no idea
mm.
what's waiting for me there. So there is a sense of absolutely an unknown ness of it. Yeah, when we get to Abram's story, I think that'll be some really interesting stuff as God leads him. So, all
Okay, thank you.
right, let me break here.